Okay, well, if you hear a lot of heavy breathing, I've now moved inside from outside because it's starting to snow and it's getting really cold. And Dave was kind enough to make me a fire, so I feel like that hand that's going to reach in at Christmas time and sort of stir the Yule logs for you. But let's continue. So lesson 3, we're going to talk a little bit about the construction of our reality. I'm going to challenge you a little bit to shift your belief system. What I'm going to explain to you is that we all have to create, almost like you think about Lord of the Rings and how they create the whole world. We each do that for ourselves. And how we do that is we take small bits of truth and then we create a whole bunch of story around that truth. And let me just explain how that happens. You know, in a lot of cultures, they talk about the Maya or the illusion of life that we live in. And I really do believe that that's mostly true. You know, if I look at someone and they smile at me, I might make a judgment, well, that person likes me. Well, they could be thinking about ding-dongs or ho-hos and be smiling, and I just happen to be in the direction that they're facing. But I've now made an assumption without interviewing the subject on the truth of what I've decided. And I actually take that little person and I put them in the construct of my reality, and I build a whole story in my head of how they relate to me. And I do this with every single person. Now, the problem with this is that we don't ever go back to the source and say, hey, can I just check in with you because I've made a bunch of assumptions about you that I've now decided are truths? And I've constructed my whole basis of reality and relationship with you based on that little grain of sand and a whole bunch of my own story. And if we look at that, when people talk about the fact that our reality is really created in our head, that's what they mean. So if that's true, it's a little bit like deciding to talk to the person that you want to work on relationship with and beginning to look at, what are my beliefs about relationship? Because if I've made a whole bunch of assumptions about you, you all know the little funny sort of paradigm about that. When I assume, I make an ass out of you and me. If I don't actually stop, and NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, does a beautiful job of describing this. They sort of talk about the fact that we're kind of like, you know, little trains on a track with blinders on, and we're all sort of choo-chooing towards our own goal. And we've got these blinders on and we can only see our version of the world. And then when we collide with somebody else who also has blinders on, who's pursuing their version of the world, we think that they're harming us on purpose. And in fact, we just collided with somebody who didn't have any more awareness than we did. So when we start to look at the truth of what we believe, there's very little that we can hang our hat on or really take for truth unless we've put down our version of the world, put down our little kaleidoscope glasses, and we start to interview the people around us. And Heather Robertson, you are my idol in this. Had an amazing lunch with Heather yesterday. And she's one of the people I know who is the most incredible relationship person, because what she does is she interviews you. She is curious about who you are. And so when you sit down and you're in relationship with Heather, she literally will ask you some questions that just pull these incredible stories out of you. But what she's actually asking is to know you. Are you curious about the people you're in relationship with? Do you care enough to understand them, to ask the questions? And so when we begin to take a role in relationship of actually asking what's true for other people instead of making those stories up in our head, we begin to have a very much stronger foundation for understanding the new shift and new paradigm in relationship. And that's one of the foundational pieces that I want to teach before we actually get into the process of how this works. Because when we understand that we are creating our belief systems in every moment, and we actually get a chance to choose, we get a chance to recognize that the stories that we make up about ourselves and other people often are grounded in very tiny experiences, and then it's based on our background experience, good or bad, as to how we choose to interpret that. Imagine the freedom in your life if you actually could make a different choice.